Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into the awe-inspiring journey of an artist whose career is honestly a masterclass in both biological phenomena and brilliant musical evolution. We're talking, of course, about Mariah Carey. Together, we're going to uncover the literal biophysics behind her incredible voice, and then we'll trace her stunning metamorphosis from a heavily managed pop sensation into a fiercely independent R&B and hip-hop pioneer. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's dive right into this. How exactly does she physically create that iconic, piercing sound? You know the one. When you first hear it, it honestly startles you just as much as it mesmerizes you. It's this very high-pitched, almost piccolo-like sound that she just seems to produce completely effortlessly. Though hey, if you've ever tried to hit that note while singing in the car, you know it is absolutely not easy. The mechanics behind it are a literal marvel of human anatomy.
So, to really understand it, we have to define what's known scientifically as the whistle register, or your whistle voice. Now, some untrained female singers might stumble upon a whistle voice starting just below 1,000 hertz, but coloratura sopranos and trained artists like Carey, they're hitting notes way above that, typically ranging anywhere from 1570 hertz up to over 3,000 hertz. According to vocal scientists, this sound is produced in the larynx, and it relies heavily on this thing called acoustic inertance, right below the third formant of the vocal tract. To put that in plain English, her vocal tract basically acts like a perfectly tuned acoustic amplifier. It interacts with the air to help set her vocal folds into this incredibly rapid, sustained vibration.
Now, what's really fascinating here is the visual proof of that science. If you look at a spectrogram of Mariah producing vocal glides, you'll see a primary fundamental frequency, the F0, and she is hitting a staggering 2400 hertz. I mean, to put that into perspective, that's roughly a D7 note on a piano. Notice how almost all the energy is concentrated right there in that primary frequency line at all pitches, with very little reinforcement in the messy higher harmonics above it. Essentially, her fundamental frequency is getting a massive concentrated boost directly from her vocal tract. And it gets even cooler. When you map out different vowel shapes against those acoustic inertance curves, a perfect harmony emerges. Take vowel shapes like A and E. The frequency range just below and above 1500 to 3000 hertz sits right in a region of super high inertance. So when Carey shapes her throat this way, she is essentially hacking her own biology. She's naturally reinforcing her fundamental frequency to get that piercing, crystal clear whistle note without boosting all the extra noise. It is literally a perfect harmony of biology and acoustics.
Part 1. Rise of the Songbird.
Long before the whole world knew her as the Songbird Supreme, Mariah was just a young demo singer from Long Island working part-time jobs and putting in 500 hours at beauty school just to make rent. But her trajectory completely changed in 1988 when she handed a demo tape to Columbia Records executive Tommy Mottola. That single tape ignited an absolute bidding war. And what happened next? Completely unprecedented. Her debut single Vision of Love hit #1 in 1990. Then Love Takes Time. Then Someday, I Don't Want to Cry, and Emotions. She became the first, and she still remains the only artist to have their first 5 singles consecutively reach #1 on the Billboard Hot 100.
This whole early era really culminated in 1993 with the release of her album Music Box. Now, this record was heavily shaped by Mottola and Columbia to be this very pristine, adult contemporary pop-friendly album. And hey, it worked beautifully. Music Box was a massive success, selling over 28 million copies globally. That makes it one of the best-selling albums of all time. But underneath that pristine pop exterior, a massive creative shift was starting to brew.
Part 2. A musical metamorphosis.
So this brings us to a really crucial turning point in her career, a beautiful, artistic metamorphosis. Early on, as we just saw, Columbia marketed her pretty much purely as a pop artist, known for these big, wholesome ballads directed by label executives. But starting with her album Daydream and fully coming to life in Butterfly, her true artistic identity emerged. She started consolidating creative control. She embraced hip-hop and R&B, and she adopted this coolly erotic, incredibly breathy vocal style, all while collaborating with legendary hip-hop icons like Sean Combs, Q-Tip, and Missy Elliott.
This creative pivot, it was a huge risk for sure, but it totally rewrote the rules of pop music, and the payoff was instant. Her track Fantasy became the very first single by a female artist to debut at #1. Soon after that, One Sweet Day, which she did with the R&B group Boyz II Men, stayed at #1 for a record-breaking 16 weeks. And her 1997 album Butterfly became her best-reviewed album up to that point. Critics and fans alike celebrated her for those mature lyrical themes and that distinctly relaxed, controlled, breathy vocal delivery that relied way less on pop cliches.
Part 3. Turbulence and Resilience.
But look, any true metamorphosis means you have to break out of a cocoon, right? And the early 2000s brought immense turbulence for her. First, there was an intense separation from Tommy Mottola and Columbia Records. This was quickly followed by some fierce industry drama. Reports circulated widely about a bitter dispute where the sample originally planned for her single Loverboy actually ended up being used for Jennifer Lopez's track I'm Real, which forced Carey to change her composition entirely. Then, in the summer of 2001, she suffered a highly publicized physical and emotional breakdown leading to hospitalization for exhaustion. All of this resulted in severe delays and critical panning for her film and soundtrack Glitter.
At that point, a lot of people in the industry genuinely thought her peak was in the rearview mirror. But she gracefully bounced back from that decline in 2005. She delivered this massive 21st century resurgence with the album The Emancipation of Mimi. It was an absolute blockbuster, anchored by the smash hit We Belong Together, which Billboard actually went on to rank as the most successful song of the entire 2000s decade.
Part 4. An Undeniable Chart Legacy.
So, the crucial point is that resilience didn't just bring her back to the spotlight, it cemented her as one of the most successful musicians in all of recorded history. 19. I just want you to take a second and appreciate the weight of that number. Mariah Carey holds 19 #1 Billboard Hot 100 singles. That is literally the absolute most for any solo artist in history. Oh, and she also has the most #1s as a female songwriter with 18 and as a female producer with 15.
When you zoom out, the broader statistics are honestly hard to even fathom. She has spent a cumulative, record-breaking 101 weeks at the top of the charts. She's sold over 220 million records globally. Her absolute holiday standard, All I Want for Christmas Is You, has sold over 16 million copies alone, perfectly earning her that enduring title of the Queen of Christmas. And perhaps the wildest stat of all, she maintained a streak of 11 consecutive years charting a #1 song.
Which leaves us with this final, really provocative question. How did one artist's blend of virtuosic vocal science and hip-hop integration forever change the blueprint for modern pop stars? By harnessing the literal physics of the human vocal tract to create sounds that seem impossible, and by bravely rewriting the rules of what a pop star could sing over, Mariah Carey didn't just dominate the charts. She built the bridge between pop and hip-hop that today's biggest artists walk across every single day and that you are likely listening to on your playlist right now. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep exploring, keep listening closely, and I'll catch you next time.